Stephanie Dowell, a vibrant 62-year-old hairstylist, lived a life brimming with laughter and love. A devoted mother and grandmother, she served as a pillar in her Los Angeles community. But an aching emptiness lingered beneath her radiant surface, a yearning for love that lured her down a perilous path. In a twist that stunned all who knew her, Stephanie married David Brinson, a convicted quadruple murderer serving 4 life sentences. She saw past his heinous crimes, convinced their love could redeem him. Conjugal visits sealed their ill-fated union. Stephanie never imagined her leap of faith would demand the ultimate price. On November 13th, during an unsupervised overnight prison visit, guards discovered Stephanie's lifeless body. Her heart's chosen one had committed the unthinkable betrayal. This cautionary tale unravels Stephanie's quest for love, the human heart's complexities, a flawed prison system, and the perils of romanticizing the irredeemable. As her story unfolds, it invites somber reflection on the hard lessons concealed within this shattering tragedy. Stevi, as cherished friends called her, embodied the pulsing spirit of her city, dynamic, diverse, alive. Her children and grandchildren basked in her devotion. Stephanie's magic transcended her inner circle. Clients entered her salon burdened and emerged transformed, their spirits lifted by her compassionate touch. Over snipping scissors, they poured out their joys and sorrows, and she consoled them with an open heart. Vivid colors and soulful touches suffused Stephanie's home, mirroring her eclectic style. Loved ones gathered around her table to savor the comforting flavors of her legendary soul food. But for all the fulfillment family and community brought her, Stephanie nursed a secret ache for a soulmate. Optimism buoyed her through past heartaches. She held fast to her conviction that love could bloom in the most barren soil, unaware it would lead to her demise. Stephanie's decision to marry a man with David Brinson's violent past shocked her loved ones like an earthquake. His crimes were beyond understanding. The ruthless murder of 4 men during a robbery, a complete lack of remorse and a near-lifetime imprisonment, a history of relentless violence that crushed any chance of reform. Stephanie peered beyond the monster to see a broken man she believed her love could make whole. Her compassion drove her to recklessly dismiss the risks and the desperate pleas of those who loved her. Heedless of the warnings, she marched forward to seal her fate, unaware it would be her final act. On that November night, Stephanie arrived at Mule Creek State Prison, anticipating tender moments with her husband. The couple had earned the privilege of unsupervised overnight visits, normally reserved for well-behaved inmates. But tenderness devolved into terror. When at 2 a.m., David phoned the guards to report Stephanie had collapsed. They rushed in to find her unresponsive body. Frantic resuscitation efforts failed. An hour later, she was declared dead, originally assumed from natural causes. 4 excruciating months passed before the coroner uncovered the chilling reality. Stephanie was strangled. Shock and outrage reverberated through the community. Urgent questions demanded answers. Why allow a ruthlessly violent inmate unsupervised visits? What safeguards existed to protect visitors like Stephanie? How did staff miss signs of her fatal distress? Why the 4-month delay in revealing the truth of her death? Stephanie's murder exposed the gaping holes in the prison's visitation policies and sparked public outcry for accountability and change. The investigation launched with David's chilling 2 a.m. call reporting Stephanie's collapse. Guards raced to the scene only to find her lifeless. Doomed efforts to revive her ceased an hour later. Foul play was overlooked. Natural causes were initially blamed. 4 months crawled by before the coroner's bombshell: strangulation. The truth detonated shockwaves through the community. The probe took a dark pivot to unearth how such savagery could unfold in a prison visit meant to be monitored. Investigators trained their sights on David and the troubling circumstances behind the tragedy. Gaping flaws in visitation protocols for violence-prone inmates quickly surfaced. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, sanctions family visits for qualifying prisoners, but sets no firm bans against multiple murderers. Outraged citizens demanded immediate reforms to shield visitors from inmates with blood-soaked pasts. As detectives worked to build their case, prosecutors braced to file charges upon receiving the final police reports. Stephanie's family seethed in anguished frustration, pleading for explanations and justice. They struggled to fathom how a man with David's savage history gained clearance for private visits, and vowed to fight so no family would again endure their pain. Their crusade for answers cast an unforgiving light on the cracks in a system that failed to protect Stephanie at the cost of her life. Stephanie's son, Armand Torres, reeled in disbelief and agony, unable to comprehend how the system abandoned his mother to her brutally violent death. How could they just let this happen? "I just don't get it," he cried, haunted by visions of her final terror and futile cries for help. The family's pain seared deeper with the knowledge of David's murderous past. Armand demanded, "Given the history that this guy has, we kind of wanted to know how is it even possible for them to be unsupervised?" The choice to grant a killer conjugal privacy smacked of reckless negligence that left them drowning in anguished questions. Amidst their grief, Stephanie's loved ones clung to memories of her selfless spirit. The most giving, kind-hearted person, her mother Oveta Wilson reminisced. Stephanie's salon had been a haven where her community sought solace and support. Her loss left a void as vast as her love. Determined to pry answers from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the family insisted on full transparency about the systemic blunders that left Stephanie defenseless with her killer. They channeled their pain into calls for accountability from those whose lapses enabled the tragedy. For Stephanie's family, her death transcended personal loss to become a crusade for change. They demanded an exhaustive probe into conjugal visit policies, especially for violent offenders. Fueled by grief and resolve, they vowed to thrust their heartbreak into the spotlight as a force for reform to shield other families from their fate. In seeking justice for Stephanie, they would honor her memory and ensure her loss resounded as a call to action. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation sanctions conjugal visits for eligible inmates, yet the question looms: on what grounds did a convicted mass killer merit that privilege? Stephanie's case casts an accusing spotlight on the undeniable responsibility of prison officials to safeguard visitors, especially from prisoners with histories of brutality. David Brinson's clearance for unsupervised overnight visits while serving 4 life terms for slaughter exposes alarming fault lines in the prison's risk assessment protocols. The CDCR's visitation policies demand rigorous reevaluation to prioritize visitor safety. Lifers and those with multiple violent convictions should face categorical bans on unsupervised visits. Stringent background checks and elevated scrutiny must apply to all inmate-visitor relationships. Monitoring and security during all visits, supervised or not, are paramount. The system's catastrophic failure to avert this tragedy has shattered Stephanie's family and left them grasping for answers. Her murder is a gut-wrenching reminder that prisons bear the solemn duty of shielding visitors from harm. The CDCR must be held to account for enabling this forbidden fatal visit. Decisive steps are vital to ensure no family again pays so steep a price for an inmate's privilege. Stephanie's ordeal casts a Klieg light on an insidious cultural current, the romanticization of prison love. Women in particular fall prey to the fantasy of saving or redeeming an incarcerated partner. Steeped in a yearning for connection or the allure of the forbidden, they lose sight of the perils lurking beneath the illusion. Stephanie's tragic leap into marriage with a ruthlessly violent convict begs the question, What drives someone to overlook an inmate's murderous crimes in the name of love? Her blind faith that devotion could override David's blood-stained past now stands as a cautionary tale about the peril of misplaced belief in the power of redemption. Popular media fuels this toxic myth, spinning tales of prison love as passionate, transformative, even noble. But the fairy tale crumbles in the harsh light of lockup reality. Insurmountable barriers, volatility, the constant specter of violence. Conjugal bonds spawn dangerous power imbalances ripe for abuse. For Stephanie, the dream of jailhouse love likely blinded her to red flags that loomed like billboards to others. Society must renounce the destructive myth of prison romance. Love and hope for redemption are admirable, but not at the sacrifice of reason and safety. Stephanie's death tolls as a haunting knell, warning that love is treacherous terrain when it leads through prison gates. In her memory, let us build a world where the vulnerable are shielded from the siren song of toxic entanglements. Stephanie Dowell's tragic murder sounds an urgent call for sweeping reform in prison visitation policies. The fact that her convicted killer husband had unsupervised access to her expose's glaring lapses in the criteria prisons use to grant inmates this weighty privilege. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, must immediately reevaluate its protocols to prevent more lives from being lost to such grievous oversights. The most critical gap to close is the lack of an explicit ban on unsupervised visits for inmates with violent criminal pasts. The CDCR asserts that strict standards of sustained good behavior govern eligibility, but David Brinson's case lays bare the lethal inadequacy of these rules. An unrepentant mass murderer serving 4 life sentences should never have had an unchaperoned moment with a visitor, regardless of his jailhouse conduct. To shield visitors from future atrocities, the CDCR must enact ironclad restrictions on unsupervised visitation for violent offenders. This could entail an outright prohibition for those convicted of multiple brutal crimes or serving life terms. More rigorous background checks on visitors and heightened vetting of relationships between inmates and outsiders are also vital precautions. Equally crucial is an unwavering commitment to visitor safety through airtight security during all visits, monitored or not. Prisons must invest in surveillance cameras, panic alarms, and other emergency safeguards in visiting areas. Staff training to recognize and swiftly intercept signs of distress or brewing violence is also paramount. By taking proactive steps to detect and deflect danger, the CDCR can fulfill its sacred duty to protect the innocent partners, parents, and children who pass through its gates to see their loved ones, even those who have committed the most heinous offenses. The death of Stephanie Diane Brinson at the hands of her husband David Brinson during a conjugal visit at Solano State Prison sent shockwaves through her family and community. Photos of Stephanie's warm smile and kind eyes, now forever frozen in time, served as a haunting contrast to the violent end she met. Her mother clutched Stephanie's favorite sweater, still faintly bearing her scent, as tears streamed down her face. "She always saw the best in people," she whispered, "even when they didn't deserve it." Stephanie's journal, discovered after her passing, revealed a woman longing for love and connection, even in the darkest of circumstances. The prison's visiting room, once a place of hope and reunion for inmates and their families, now felt tainted, its cheerful murals unable to mask the horror that had unfolded within its walls. Whispers spread among the prisoners and guards, many unable to fathom how such an act could have occurred under their watch. As the community grappled with the loss, hard questions emerged about the conjugal visit program's efficacy and safety. Impassioned pleas from advocates clashed with the cold realities of budgets and liability at tense town hall meetings. Some demanded an end to the program, while others argued for reform, desperate not to let Stephanie's death be in vain. Stephanie's friends gathered to remember the vibrant spirit who touched their lives. They shared stories of her infectious laughter, her unwavering loyalty, and her boundless capacity for forgiveness. In their grief, they found solace and purpose, vowing to honor Stephanie's legacy by working to prevent future tragedies. Amid the sorrow and anger, glimmers of hope emerged. Stephanie's story ignited conversations about domestic violence, inspiring survivors to speak out and seek help. Local domestic violence shelters saw an outpouring of support and donations in her memory. Though nothing could bring Stephanie back, her loved ones found comfort in knowing that her story would continue to make a difference. They planted a tree in her favorite park, a living memorial to a life cut short but never forgotten. As the sapling took root and grew, it stood as a reminder of Stephanie's enduring spirit and the power of love to triumph over even the darkest of circumstances. Thanks for listening to No Tears for Black Girls. If you enjoyed our show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating, hit that subscribe button, and give us a follow on social media. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue sharing these important stories. Stay blessed, stay loved, and most importantly, stay safe.